Hello everyone, it's Pastor Lon here. I wanted to come to you with a little bit of devotion time. Hope everybody's had a good week thus far, and hope the Lord continues to bless you. Wanted to read a little bit today out of the Old Testament, Exodus chapter 14. Begin reading, as far as the text, I'm begin reading at verse 11. That's Exodus chapter 14, verse 11. It reads like this. It said, "And they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me, speaking to the children of Israel, that they go forward?" And then, let's just go ahead and read them for this latest foundation. Verse 16, "But lift up thy rod and stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground." Remember that. "Through the midst of the sea. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all of his host, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I got me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the angel of the Lord which went before the camp of Israel removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud of darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that one came not near the other all the night. And Moses," verse 21, "And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land." Listen to that word again. "And the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry ground. And the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left hand." Now, I want to talk just a little bit tonight about when dry ground is good ground. Many times in our lives, we think about planting a garden, or we think about when the land is dry, it don't produce anything, it don't grow a good crop, it may be real dusty, it's just barren, it's no good for anything. You may be walking through some times like that in your life when you feel like you're walking through a dry spot or a dry spell. Everything seems to be dead or dormant around you, and it seems real dusty, and life's just not what all you expect it to be or hoping it may be. But I want to encourage you tonight just to hang on, because when the children of Israel came up to the Red Sea and they seen that Pharaoh and his guys were bearing down on them, it said in verse 7 in chapter 14 that verse 6, "He made ready his chariot and took his people with him, and he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and captains over every one of them." So all he had, he went after the children of Israel when Moses was leading them out of Egypt, leading them to the promised land. But if you remember what I read in your hearing, starting at verse 11 and 12, they complained because now everything was good until they looked back and seen that Pharaoh was bearing down on them. And they said, "You might as well have left us to worship the Egyptians and to live for them and died in Egypt than to leave us out here in the wilderness." I think about how we complain and murmur and complain a lot. All of us do, especially to me. And you probably could say especially you. We all murmur and complain at different things in our life, but he told in verse 13, "And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Now, he encouraged them in the very next verse, the latter part of the day, said that encouraged the children of Israel that they should go forward. It wasn't time to back up. We at the Red Sea. Pharaoh's bearing down with all of his men. They're already murmuring and complaining, but God rolled the waters back. Amen. With a strong wind. He had a wall on the right side, a wall on the left side. And it blows my mind how people can't believe that there's a God when it was all wet and muddy, and just that quick God made dry ground. At this time, when dry ground is good ground, is when the enemy's after you and you need a good footing to get away from the devil. If you'll follow Jesus Christ, he'll lead you in the right direction. It may be dry ground, and you may think, and even they still had to have some fear in their heart. Even when he walled the water up on the right side and the left side, you still, if you murmur and complain because you wished it had left us in Egypt to die, they felt like they were going to die out in the wilderness, you know, they still had the doubt. Even you got a wall of water on each side, it was muddy and wet just a few moments ago. And now he sent that wind to stand the water up on each side and to dry the ground. And on dry ground they went across. Meaning dry ground, meaning they wasn't sinking in the mud. They wasn't having a hard time. They went across with no problem. And I don't know who I'm talking to today, but you may be going through a dry spell right now. But dry ground could be good ground, because that's when God can lead us and guide us. That's when God can speak to us. That's when God can show us something. That's when we can take the time to put things in perspective. Now, if I had any doubt that God was real, when I seen him roll the water back on the right and the left side, and now that's dry ground and I can go across with ease, hey, he's done me like that in my life plenty of times. He's probably done you the same way. You can remember right now, you can reminisce and think about some times when you were up against the Red Sea, the enemy was bearing down behind you, and all of a sudden God made a way. He made a way for his chosen people that day, and he's made a way for you and I in the past, and he'll make a way for you in the future. So if you're up to the Red Sea right now, dry ground is good ground, because God can lead you across it. It don't seem too good in the garden when everything's dry and dusty and barren and a drought's going on. We may not think but God is still teaching us, and that's when we have to have more faith in God when the ground is dry. When there's no moisture there to grow the plant, we still got to have faith like Noah did. He had faith. It was dry, had never rained before. He had faith, and he built the ark. I'm telling you today that Moses had faith when he stretched his rod out. It said in verse 21, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused, not Moses, not the rod, the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went in the midst of the sea upon dry ground with no problem, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on the left hand. So, to sum it up tonight, and if you look over there again in verse 29, it said, and the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left hand. God saved his children that day. He made a way for them. And you know the story, when Pharaoh's army, when all of them got in the midst of the sea, he let the waters come back. He gave the sea its strength back, and he killed every one of them. You read it, he drowned every one of them that day. The enemy was completely destroyed. So whoever you are today, just remember, if you're up against the Red Sea and God parts the waters for you, don't be afraid to go cross on dry ground, because dry ground at this point in your life is good ground. He's leading you, he's guiding you. And those children of Israel walked across with ease, and then they knew that there was a God in heaven then when they made a way for him. He made a hallway across the ocean, across the sea, the Red Sea, for them to go across. And they looked back, and when Pharaoh's army got there, he consumed them with the water that he made. And I want to leave you with this. I got a quote I want to leave you with, and I want to leave you with this first. You know, I heard people say, I'd heard it was kind of humorous. I heard somebody say one time that they was this atheist, didn't believe in God, and he said that they've done studies and said all you Christians are a bunch of fools, because they done a lot of studying, and they found out that where they crossed the sea that day, he was making a mockery of God. When they crossed the sea that day, they found out that the water where they crossed wasn't but ankle deep. That God didn't do what he didn't have to wall the water back. It wasn't but ankle deep where they went across that day. You know what the person told the atheist? So that lets me know that my God's even greater than I thought he was, because he drowned every one of Pharaoh's men, every one of the horses, every one of the evil men, and Pharaoh himself, he drowned every one of them in ankle-deep water. That's the God that we serve today. I'm telling you, he makes no mistakes. He is who he says he is, and he'll make a way for you and I. So dry ground can be good ground when God's leading you in the right direction. I got a lady, she's become a good friend of ours on YouTube. She's a subscriber, and Miss Carol Effner, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce your name right, Miss Carol, but she's been sending me quotes on my email, and I appreciate that. Any of you want to send anything on our email, please go to our About Us page on our page and find out what our address is, our email address is. But she said, a man can go to heaven without health, without riches, without honors, without learning, without friends, but he can never go there without Christ. That is so true. We can go to heaven without many things in our life, without good health, without riches, without honors, without learning, without friends, but none of us can make it to heaven without Jesus Christ. And I appreciate her. That's from John Dyer, Walsh poet and pastor from the 1700s. I appreciate Miss Carol for sending me that. I hope it was a blessing unto you. And remember, dry ground is good ground when God is trying to lead you out of the enemy's grasp, out of the enemy's grip. Amen. As he did the children of Israel that day. Love and appreciate you. May God richly bless you the rest of this day and the rest of this week. And remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and Jesus Christ is the answer for any and everything you're dealing with in life. Hope y'all have a wonderful day. God bless you.